Hey everybody, welcome back to the Connected channel. I'm Aaron Hurley. If this is your first time joining me, thank you so much, and take a moment to subscribe below so that you know when I put up new content daily. And we're going to start a 3-part series on the supremacy of Christ in our personal life. And today, I ask you this up front. Does Jesus have first place and supremacy in your life? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today coming up. Hey everybody, welcome back for another edition of 5 Minutes for Your Faith. Today is part 1 of our supremacy study that I mentioned up front, and today is going to be Jesus as the beginning. And our focal passage today will be Colossians chapter 1, verse 18. And so as always, I'm going to put it up on the screen for you so you can follow along with me as we break it down. So let's read the passage together. And he is also the head of the body, the church, and he is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he himself will come to have first place in everything. We can see what's going on here. Is what I want to do is today we're talking about Jesus as the beginning. The passage talks about Jesus being the beginning, but that means a lot of different things. But primarily, as we break this passage down today, we want to take it in 2 directions. One, we're talking about the supremacy of Christ as creator, but we're also talking about Jesus as being supreme in our own personal life, our walk with him. And so let's break this passage down as we go forward. And the first part's this: head. This word head contextually means the cornerstone, the supreme one, the preeminent one, or the one with prominence. In other words, what we see is this reflects back to Genesis chapter 1, where he says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's this whole idea that God is the preeminent creator. He was there before all things were. Out of all things, God made everything. And in him, all things consist and have their being. And that's what we're talking about here, but we're also speaking into the idea that Jesus has supremacy and the beginningness, if you will, of our own life. The value that we have, our purpose that we have, all of these things tie back to the person of Jesus Christ being in the beginning before anything else was. We talked about our holy calling last week and how in him he has established in us from the beginning of time and even before then this purpose that he has created us for. And so he's talking about being head, being the one in which everything else leans on him as the cornerstone of their existence. So let's go forward to the next part, and that's this. It's this idea of beginning. It means his kingly or magisterial position in which he is the initial starting point and everything else derives their value from him. So when we look at this, literally what it's saying is that he is the preeminent one. He is the pre-existing one. He is the one who has never not been. It's interesting to think about the person of God as he is the only person who is just is. That's why he calls himself I am. He's the only person that can speak about himself in past, present, and future terms in the present, because he never wasn't and he never will not be. He just is. He is the self-existent one. He is the one with the word aseity, one who has being within themselves. He requires nothing from the outside and he needs nothing to sustain him. He has being within himself. And so he is the beginning point which everything else points back to find their point of reference and their point of beginning and find their value, intent, and purpose in. So that includes you as well. So let's go to the next part, and that's this. Firstborn. It literally means the first among others, elevated beneficiary, and the primarily unique one. The Bible says God gave his only begotten son, depending on what translation you read. And literally what that means is not that Jesus was born as if he was created when he was born, because there's a lot of heretical viewpoints about the person and the deity of Christ that have this idea that Jesus was a created being. He is the eternally existent God from before time began, the eternally present one. And so when we talk about being the only begotten, it's this idea that he is the unique one of God. He is the Messiah of God. He is the unique person of God himself, who has translated himself into the time-space continuum that we live in, who was willing to become like us, yet without sin, to relate to us in order that in him we may have a hope of salvation and redemption. And so this whole idea of being firstborn means a lot of things. From the dead, being the firstborn from the dead. Obviously, Jesus was not the first person to rise from the dead, but he's the first person who rose under his own power because he's God. Into the Father's hand, he commended his spirit. He said, I am able to lay my life down and pick it back up up again. This is the person we're talking about, the one who was able to lay his life down to be the firstborn among the dead so that many more would be redeemed, so that many more would be raised from the dead, including us. Let's go to this last part, and that's this. First place, literally possessing and maintaining chiefdom, the winner of the prize, glorified and lauded. We know how the story ends. We can read Revelations. We can see how he becomes the one who inherits all things. He is the preeminent king, and he is the one who is glorified, who is given a name above all other names by which every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. Every person will see him. Every person will adore him. Every person will magnify him for who he is, even his own enemies. And that is something that we can lean on when we need a hope, when we are looking into the world that we live in and see that God is on his throne. He is biding his time. He is perfectly obedient to the Father, waiting for the Father to give him the green light to go and redeem and fully sanctify and rescue and reap the church from the earth. He is described in the Bible as the supreme one, the glorified one. But is he the supreme and glorified one in your life? Does he take preeminence in your life? Is he the number one priority in your life today? That's what you have to come to grips with for yourself. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can make that choice for you. But what you can know is if Jesus is truly the preeminent and supreme one in your life, it'll come out in the way that you live. Thank you so much for joining me for 5 Minutes for Your Faith, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.